When people look at Ralph Lauren now, they see polish. They see elegance that feels effortless, as if it always belonged to him. They see a name stitched into history, not a man who once carried it like a borrowed coat, hoping no one would notice it didn't quite fit yet. But that's never how it begins. Ralph Lauren was born Ralph Lifshitz, the son of Jewish immigrants who came to America with more fear than money and more hope than certainty. The kind of hope that doesn't announce itself. The quiet hope that simply says, maybe my children will not have to run like I did. He grew up in the Bronx, not the romantic version people imagine later, but the real one. Crowded apartments, shared walls, voices always close, dreams always louder than the space allowed for them. His parents worked hard, but hard work does not equal security when you start with nothing. It only equals survival. From early on, Ralph noticed something about the world. Not how it was, but how it wanted to be seen. Other boys noticed strength, or speed, or how to stay invisible. Ralph noticed style. Not fashion as trend, but style as signal. How a jacket could make someone seem more confident. How a tie could make a man feel taller than his circumstances. How clothing was not just fabric, but storytelling. He didn't have the language for it yet. He only knew that when he dressed well, people treated him differently. They listened longer. They assumed more. They imagined him as something he had not yet become. That realization stayed with him. School was not a place of belonging. Neither was the neighborhood. He was ambitious in an environment that rewarded toughness more than imagination. He learned early that wanting more could be dangerous if you wanted it too loudly. So he learned to want quietly. He changed his last name to Lauren as a teenager. Not out of shame, but strategy. He understood something many people never do. Names are symbols, and symbols shape first impressions. He wasn't erasing his past. He was preparing a future. After school, there was no inheritance, no safety net, no clear path. He worked where he could. Sales jobs, factory floors, places where time is exchanged directly for money and creativity is not asked for, only obedience. He worked in a tie company. That detail matters. Ties were not glamorous. They were accessories, not statements. Narrow, conservative, designed to disappear into suits, but Ralph saw what they could be. Wider, bolder, confident. Ties that didn't apologize for taking up space. He started sketching ideas no one asked for, imagining a man who didn't just dress for his job, but dressed for the life he wanted. A man who walked into a room already belonging there. Ralph didn't have money. He didn't have connections. He didn't have permission. What he had was vision, and vision is dangerous when the world isn't ready for it. Manufacturers laughed at him. Buyers dismissed him. Executives told him men would never wear ties like that America wasn't Europe, that confidence like this didn't sell. They were not cruel, they were practical. Practicality often sounds like wisdom when it's actually fear dressed up as experience. Ralph kept going. He borrowed money. He convinced people one conversation at a time. He sold ties out of a drawer, not a showroom, not a brand, a drawer. That's where most icons begin, hidden, folded, waiting. He called his line Polo, not because he played the sport, but because he understood imagery. Polo was not about reality. It was about aspiration, horses, wealth, leisure, control. It was the opposite of the Bronx, and that was exactly the point. Ralph wasn't selling ties. He was selling an image America hadn't fully articulated yet, but desperately wanted to believe in. That elegance could be earned, that class could be learned, that you didn't need to be born into privilege to look like you belonged there. This is where many people misunderstand him. They think he copied aristocracy. He didn't. He democratized it. He took symbols of old wealth and made them available to people who felt like outsiders. Immigrants, dreamers, strivers, people who wanted to step into a version of themselves they hadn't been allowed to be yet. Ralph was one of them. The early years were fragile. One bad order could end everything. One returned shipment could collapse the dream. There were moments when he was broke enough that quitting would have been rational. But he had learned something deeper than business. He understood that identity comes before success. That if you can see the person you're becoming clearly enough, you can endure being misunderstood for a long time. He wasn't building a company yet. He was building a world, and the world did not fully see it. Not yet. There is a moment in every long journey where survival quietly turns into resistance. Not loud defiance, not dramatic rebellion, but a steady refusal to shrink. Ralph reached that moment without realizing it at first. As Polo began to exist beyond his own imagination, the fashion industry tried to place it into a box. Buyers wanted the ties but not the philosophy. Department stores liked the margins but questioned the attitude. They asked him to soften it, to make it safer, to align with what already worked. Ralph listened, but he did not bend. He understood something that takes many people decades to learn. Compromise on execution is normal. Compromise on identity is fatal. So he allowed distribution deals, pricing negotiations, logistical constraints. What he never surrendered was the story. Polo would not be just another label hanging on a rack. It would be a lifestyle spoken without words. That insistence cost him opportunities. It delayed growth. It created tension with partners who wanted faster returns. But it also created clarity. When people encountered the brand, they felt something consistent. A mood, a posture, a quiet confidence that didn't chase attention. Ralph expanded slowly, almost stubbornly. Shirts came next, then full collections. Each piece was designed not to impress fashion insiders, but to fit into a coherent universe. He imagined the rooms his customers lived in, the books they pretended to have read, the weekends they wished they had. This was not deception, it was aspiration. And aspiration is a powerful engine. Critics accused him of selling fantasy. They weren't wrong. But fantasy has always shaped reality. Nations are fantasies before they become borders. Careers are fantasies before they become resumes. Ralph was simply honest about the transaction. Behind the scenes, the pressure was relentless. Cash flow issues, production delays, inventory risks. The constant fear that one wrong season could unravel everything he had stitched together. He was no longer selling ties from a drawer, but the stakes felt even heavier. When you grow, failure stops being private. There were moments when he questioned himself, when the distance between the world he imagined and the one he could afford felt humiliating. When the Bronx kid inside him whispered that he was pretending too hard, but then he would return to the work. Ralph did not design clothes in isolation. He absorbed art, film, history, architecture. He studied how old money dressed, not to imitate it, but to understand the psychology behind it. Why restraint feels powerful. Why simplicity communicates control. Why timelessness is more seductive than novelty. Fashion moves fast. Ralph chose to move deep. That decision made him unfashionable at times. Trends passed him by. Minimalism mocked him. Excess questioned him. Yet through all of it, the brand remained intact. Because it was never about trends, it was about permanence. The iconic polo player logo appeared not as decoration, but as a signature, a quiet claim of authorship, a reminder that this world had an author, and he knew exactly what story he was telling. As polo grew, so did the contradictions. A refugee's son selling symbols of wealth, a factory worker defining luxury, a man with no pedigree teaching America how to dress like it had one. Some people found that uncomfortable. Ralph did not explain himself. He believed that if the work was honest, it would outlast the criticism. That clarity would eventually silence confusion. And slowly, it did. Celebrities began wearing polo without contracts, not because they were paid, but because it aligned with how they wanted to be seen. Politicians adopted it. Students copied it. Entire subcultures reshaped it, bending it to their own identities. Ralph watched all of this with quiet attention. He did not panic when people interpreted the brand differently. He understood that once a story becomes powerful enough, it belongs to the world. What mattered was that the core remained untouched, and it did. By the time the company became a global force, Ralph had already won the harder battle. He had proven to himself that vision can outlive doubt, that imagination, when protected fiercely enough, can become infrastructure. Yet success did not soften him. It sharpened his awareness of how fragile everything still was. Because when you build an empire on an idea, you learn that ideas must be defended every single day. Success has a way of changing the questions around you. In the beginning, people ask who you are. Later, they ask how long you can last. Ralph Lauren entered that phase quietly, without ceremony, as his name became something larger than the man himself. The company expanded into new territories, not just geographically, but emotionally. Home collections appeared, then fragrances, then entire environments built to feel like a life rather than a product. Walking into a Ralph Lauren store was no longer shopping. It was stepping into a narrative where time slowed down and everything felt intentional. This was not accidental. Ralph believed that modern life was becoming noisy, fragmented, restless. He wanted to offer stillness, a place where things felt anchored, even if only for a moment. That desire shaped everything, from the lighting in stores, to the weight of fabrics, to the way advertisements avoided shouting. But scale brings exposure. The more visible the brand became, the more people tried to define it for him. Journalists framed him as the designer of privilege. Critics argued he was romanticizing a past that never existed. Academics dissected his work as cultural appropriation, escapism, nostalgia packaged for profit. Ralph listened. He reflected. Then he kept working. He never claimed to document reality. He was building an emotional landscape, a version of America filtered through longing rather than fact. In his mind, that was not deception, it was interpretation. Art has always done that. Still, the pressure accumulated. Public companies do not run on imagination alone. Investors demanded growth, markets demanded relevance. The fashion calendar demanded constant novelty, a rhythm completely opposed to Ralph's instinct for continuity. Each season felt like a negotiation between the world's impatience and his belief in restraint. There were missteps, collections that felt diluted, extensions that stretched the brand too far, moments when the coherence he protected so fiercely showed small cracks. Ralph noticed them immediately. He always did. What made him different was not perfection, but response. When something drifted from the core, he pulled it back. When the brand spoke too loudly, he quieted it. When numbers tempted shortcuts, he chose the slower road. That discipline was expensive. Internally, it caused friction. Younger executives wanted faster pivots, trend alignment, digital-first thinking. They spoke the language of algorithms and velocity. Ralph spoke the language of memory and mood. The conversations were not hostile, but they were tense. He understood their logic. He simply did not share their urgency. Ralph believed that brands collapse not because they failed to adapt, but because they forget why they existed in the first place. Adaptation without identity, in his view, was surrender. So he made difficult decisions, stepped back from certain licenses, closed stores that no longer felt right, reduced noise even when noise seemed profitable. To outsiders, it sometimes looked like retreat. It wasn't. It was curation. Behind all of this was a man who never forgot where he came from. He did not romanticize his poverty, but he remembered the feeling of having nothing and wanting more than survival. That hunger never left him. It simply transformed. He worked relentlessly, not out of fear of losing money, but out of fear of losing coherence. The idea that Polo could become just another logo terrified him more than bankruptcy ever did. As time passed, Ralph shifted from builder to guardian. He focused less on expansion and more on preservation, less on proving himself, more on protecting the story. He did not chase relevance. He trusted that if the work remained honest, relevance would arrive on its own schedule. And it did. New generations discovered the brand not through marketing, but through inheritance, through parents' closets, through thrift stores, through images that felt oddly timeless in an age of disposability. Polo became a quiet constant in a changing world. Ralph watched this evolution with humility. He did not try to control how people use the brand. He accepted that once something becomes part of culture, it stops belonging to its creator. What mattered was that the foundation remained solid. A refugee's son had not just built a fashion house. He had built a language of identity, spoken across decades, resilient to fashion's constant erosion. And yet, even at this stage, Ralph did not consider the journey complete, because legacy, like vision, is never finished while you're still breathing. There comes a moment in every long life's work when effort is no longer the question. Endurance is. Ralph Lauren reached that moment not with exhaustion, but with clarity. He had spent decades proving that taste could be patient, that restraint could outperform noise, that an idea rooted in feeling could survive cycles designed to erase memory. What remained was something harder to confront: how to let go without disappearing. The fashion industry does not teach you how to step aside. It rewards presence, visibility, control. Designers are expected to be both creators and symbols, even when the body slows and the mind begins to ask different questions. Ralph felt that tension deeply. He had always been intensely involved. He chose fabrics with his hands. He adjusted lighting himself. He reviewed campaigns not for trends, but for truth. Stepping back felt unnatural, almost irresponsible, yet holding on too tightly risked freezing the brand in his own past. So he chose a middle path. Ralph began to speak less and observe more. He surrounded himself with people who understood the soul of what he built, not just the spreadsheets. He allowed younger designers to interpret the world through the same emotional lens, even if their expressions differed from his own instincts. This was not easy. Letting someone else shape your vision requires more trust than creating it alone ever did. There were moments of doubt, collections that surprised him in uncomfortable ways, choices that made him pause. But he reminded himself that his role was no longer to dictate every detail, but to protect the essence. Essence is not a silhouette or a color palette. It is a feeling that survives reinterpretation. Ralph focused increasingly on storytelling, not marketing stories, but human ones. He revisited his own past, not with nostalgia, but with understanding. The immigrant parents, the cramped apartment, the factory floors, the neckties sold one by one, door to door, hope by hope. He spoke about those years openly, not to inspire, but to contextualize, to explain that nothing he created came from luxury. It came from absence. That honesty reshaped how people saw him. He was no longer just a designer of aspiration. He became an example of authorship, someone who wrote his own version of America without permission. As awards accumulated and retrospectives were mounted, Ralph felt an unexpected distance from the image being constructed around him. Success had polished his edges in the public eye. The struggle had been edited out. He quietly resisted that simplification. In interviews, he returned to the uncertainty, the nights of doubt, the fear of being irrelevant before ever being seen. He wanted young creators to understand that confidence is often retrospective. In real time, it feels like confusion. The brand continued to evolve. Digital spaces replaced some physical ones. Global markets shifted, tastes fractured. Yet Ralph Lauren remained strangely intact, like a house built on bedrock while others chased moving ground. That stability was not luck, it was consequence. Consequence of saying no when yes was easier, of choosing coherence over speed, of believing that style is not what you wear, but what you refuse to compromise. As he aged, Ralph spent more time reflecting on meaning rather than metrics. He asked quieter questions. What does it mean to leave something behind that still breathes? How do you measure influence without counting units sold? The answers were never clear, but the pursuit mattered. He understood that legacy is not a statue, it is permission. Permission for others to imagine boldly without asking if they belong. Permission to build worlds from nothing but conviction. Ralph Lauren had done that, not loudly, not perfectly, but persistently. And persistence, over time, becomes its own form of elegance. As the years stretched forward, Ralph Lauren found himself living inside a paradox of his own making. The boy who once had no entry into the world he admired had become one of its architects. Yet the hunger that drove him had not vanished. It had simply changed shape. What once felt like survival now felt like responsibility. Ralph became increasingly aware that his work had traveled far beyond clothes. People were using his designs to mark weddings, funerals, beginnings, endings. The garments had entered lives at moments that mattered. That realization humbled him more than any award ever could. He began to think less about collections and more about continuity, about what it means to create something that can be trusted over decades, not seasons. Trust, he believed, was the rarest luxury of all. In meetings, he spoke about restraint as if it were a moral principle. Not every idea deserved expression. Not every trend deserved adoption. The hardest discipline was subtraction. There were pressures, of course. Shareholders asked for acceleration. Analysts questioned relevance. Younger brands moved faster, spoke louder, sold cheaper. Ralph listened, but he did not chase. He had learned long ago that chasing is what keeps you behind. Instead, he refined. He returned to fundamentals, craft, proportion, narrative. He believed that if the foundation remained honest, the structure would survive storms. Behind the scenes, Ralph was more vulnerable than the public image suggested. He worried about missteps, about dilution, about becoming a logo detached from meaning. These fears did not paralyze him. They sharpened his attention. He paid close attention to small signals, the way customers talked about the brand, the way employees described their work, the tone of internal conversations. Culture, he believed, revealed truth faster than numbers. He invested deeply in mentorship, not formal programs, but proximity. He wanted young creatives to feel the tension between commerce and art, not as enemies, but as collaborators. He taught by example, not instruction. There were moments when he wondered what life might have been if he had chosen differently, if he had pursued painting more seriously, if he had stayed behind a desk rather than stepping into the public eye. These thoughts came quietly, without regret. He understood that identity is not about choosing the perfect path. It is about committing fully to the one you take. As health inevitably became part of the conversation, Ralph faced another adjustment. Energy is finite. Time is not promised. He simplified his life further. Fewer appearances, more reflection, more private creation. He returned to drawing, to sketching ideas without expectation, creativity without consequence. It reminded him why he started in the first place. Before success, before recognition, when imagination was enough. The world continued to celebrate him, but Ralph's satisfaction came from quieter places. A collection that felt true, a campaign that told a story honestly, a young designer who found courage through his example. He had built more than a fashion house. He had built a language of aspiration that did not exclude struggle, a vision that acknowledged roots instead of erasing them. In the end, Ralph Lauren did not see himself as a success story. He saw himself as a witness to what happens when you refuse to accept the limits assigned to you, when you build images not to escape reality, but to reframe it. The refugee's son who sold neckties door to door had never tried to impress the world. He had tried to translate a feeling he carried inside. That feeling endured, and as long as it did, so would the work. In the final movement of Ralph Lauren's life story, there is no dramatic exit, no sharp conclusion, no sudden silence. There only continuity. And that perhaps is the most honest ending possible for a man who built everything slowly. Ralph never believed in endings. He believed in stewardship. As the brand matured into something larger than any individual, he accepted a truth that younger versions of himself could not have handled, that what lasts does not belong to its creator. It belongs to those who carry it forward with care. He watched the world change at a speed that once would have frightened him. Technology reshaped how people saw, bought, and expressed themselves. Attention spans fractured. Meaning became harder to hold. Yet he did not feel obsolete. He felt anchored. The principles that guided him as a broke factory worker's son still applied. Listen before speaking, observe before acting, create from conviction, not from fear. These were not fashion rules, they were life practices. Ralph often said that style is deeply personal. What he meant was this: style is memory made visible. It is how people carry their past into the present without apology. His work had always tried to honor that quiet continuity. He had never sold perfection. He sold aspiration with fingerprints on it. When people asked him what he was most proud of, he rarely mentioned revenue, scale, or influence. He spoke instead about consistency, about not abandoning the original feeling, even when abandoning it would have been profitable. That discipline cost him opportunities. It also earned him longevity. As he looked back, Ralph did not romanticize the struggle. Poverty was not a gift. Being unseen was not a blessing. But those conditions forced him to imagine a world that did not yet exist, and then to build it piece by piece. That is the part people often miss. He did not escape his circumstances. He reauthored them. The brand that carries his name became a symbol of an America that never quite existed, yet felt familiar to millions, a place of dignity, craftsmanship, and self-possession, an image of belonging that did not ask for permission. Ralph understood the responsibility of that image. He knew images shape behavior. They teach people what to want, what to value, what to believe is possible. He treated that power with caution. He never chased youth. He chased meaning, and meaning ages well. In the end, Ralph Lauren's life is not a story about fashion. It is a story about authorship, about deciding early and often that you will not let others define the limits of your imagination. He began with nothing but a feeling, a vision no one else could see, a belief that what you come from does not determine what you are allowed to create. That belief built an empire, quietly, patiently, authentically. And if there is a final lesson to carry forward, it is this: you do not need permission to imagine a better world. You only need the courage to live as if it already exists. That is how Ralph Lauren lived, and that is why his work remains.